further ado from my side, I would leave the floor to Lise. Lise?
Yes, thank you.
A short introduction about Lise. Is a doctor and professor, associate professor in social environmental psychology at the University of Groningen, and the principal investigator of the University of Groningen on the EC Square project. So we're working together on EC Square. She examines then how groups and group identities are formed and changed, and how the role of which role groups have in promoting sustainable behavior and sustainable transition from bottom up. The floor is yours, Lise.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether I can move the slides myself. And one short notice is that Fleur Goedkoop, who is the postdoc on this project, was supposed to give the presentation, but unfortunately she is sick. So I'm taking over very last minute. So please interrupt me if things are unclear. But I hope I will be able to present to you the work that we have been doing as psychologists from different groups here on the EC Square project. Could you give the next slide? Thank you. The previous one, briefly. So I'm from the University of Groningen, but what I will be presenting is research that we have been doing in collaboration with the University of Leipzig and the University of Graz, all psychology teams particularly focused on promoting energy citizenship as well as understanding involvement in energy communities. Next slide. And the main idea is that so there is a trend towards societal change, an energy system that is more citizen focused, decentralized, and that assumes citizens to be active citizens in the energy transition. However, without careful consideration of what motivates people to participate and which groups in society are most likely to participate, there is a risk that such a transition might promote a sustainable transition, but not a just transition. And this is something that we aim to tap into in our project. Next slide. So what we see today is that Germany is the lead in having energy communities, and after that is the Netherlands, but we also see that in a lot of countries in Europe, energy communities are rarely existing, but also even in Germany or in the Netherlands or in others, it's only a small portion of people who are involved. And if we then look at who are involved, it tends to be specific subsets in societies who are involved, specifically wider, older, richer men. And we wanted to understand how can we boost involvement in energy communities, and particularly focusing on how energy communities can be set up to promote involvement. Next slide. What we know from previous research is that there are often misassumptions of why people join. So there's often the assumption that people might join if it's in their financial benefit, it's in their interests. But what we see, what actually predicts joining, interest to join, as well as membership and long-term engagement, is both environmental motives, so caring about the environment, as well as caring about your community, signaling that this communal aspect plays an important role for why people become involved. And this is something that you can tap into. Next slide. This is a big slide, but main thing is that we wanted to focus on how we can create not only the perception that initiatives are able to foster a sustainable and just energy transition, but also that it feels that they are representing us as a community. And we assume that both of these facets are important for people to become involved. And what we also know from research already is that membership to energy communities and energy communities can have a positive ripple effect, meaning that they can create change in what we assume to be normative within our community, and as such motivate people to engage in sustainable behaviors, even though they themselves might not yet be a member. Next slide. I think I covered this and considering the time. Next slide. So there are a few things that we focused on. Does it matter whether an energy community receives financial support? That there is a clear legal framework around energy communities? Does it matter who's involved in the energy communities, whether it's citizens by themselves, citizens and municipalities together, or whether energy communities, energy projects are municipality-led? What kind of values are communicated, whether it's about pro-environmental values, social justice values. We also focus on how embedded the energy community is within the local region. Are they only focused on themselves, or are they really focused on the broader community? And finally, we looked at a set of features about the diversity and inclusion of energy communities. Next slide. And we wanted to test this in a different way than that it is usually done. So we did not focus on cases, we did not focus on qualitative research, but we really wanted to gain causal evidence for which set of features promote involvement. And we did this by presenting energy communities in different ways, changing some of the specific features of energy communities, and then see whether that predicted differences in willingness to join. And to get a generalized understanding, we conducted these experiments not only in one country, but in different countries that vary in how normal energy communities already are, and also in the socio-political context, and for example, the trust that there is in the government. Next slide. So what we find, a brief summary, and some of these are only tested once, so we do need further testing to really make generalized conclusion, but there is first evidence that the extent to which that energy communities who receive financial support from the government, so which are state funded, and they do not require community members to make significant financial contribution, that those are the ones who are more accepted and where people are more willing to join. Next slide. We also find that a clearer legal framework promotes willingness to join. This is because a clear legal basis signals encouraging social norms that emphasize appropriate behavior, meaning that if something is bound within a specific legal framework, it signals that we as society find this important. It's willingness to join. Next slide. But one important thing is, while on the one hand, it is, people find it nice that they are financially supported, that there is a clear legal framework, in terms of how that changes perceptions of how efficacious the initiative will be, and the extent to which the initiative will represent us as a community. That is particularly influenced by whether community members themselves are involved. And there it doesn't really matter whether it is in cooperation with the municipality or completely community-led. The main difference is that when municipalities or other external parties set up an energy community without, or an energy project without any involvement of community members, then we see that the perceived efficacy is lower. The perceived representation of the community is lower, meaning that people are less accepting of such an energy project, as well as less willing to join. Next slide, please. Another feature that we examined, so how pro-environmental should energy communities communicate that they are. And there we see that it is good to say that an energy community values environmental sustainability as well as social justice. Yet there is a risk of going too extreme. And that is, there is a risk that at the moment that you communicate yourself as more moral, or as the way to go, it might backfire because it might create an exclusive identity where others in the community might not identify with. And then in that sense, there's a risk that people become less willing to join and less accepting. And there is one interesting feature that we found that might be buffered if such a strong environmental message is accompanied with a strong connection to the local region. So you can be a little bit more extreme, it seems, in your environmental modus and in how pro-environmental you want to be, as long as you keep connection to the local region and that you show that you identify with the local region and that you want to benefit the region as a whole. Next slide. Yes, this is another thing we tested, and this is about, it's a question that I also received yesterday from governmental agencies, is does it really matter that people really interact? Yes, it does. So the more people are able to interact and spend time together, the more it is preferred, as long as if it's not a requirement. So the moment that it is perceived as you need to invest time, that might hamper willingness to join, but that you are able to connect with others in your community is a strong driver for acceptance. Next slide. This is what we started off with. So there is a specific group who tends to be involved in energy communities, and that by itself might lower the willingness of specific groups in society to join. What we interestingly find is that, for example, women are less likely to join, but at the same time, it's not because they are less motivated, but it feels that they feel less able to join and they feel less represented by members of energy communities. And what we generally find is that overall people are more willing to support more diverse energy communities. And this is still a risk. And one thing that we tested is, so could you kind of increase willingness to join for women if you just showcase that, oh, more women are involved? And it doesn't seem to be that simple. There might be other, it might need to be less, more substantiated and really feel that you are represented and that, for example, the times that are organized that fit women, but this is something that we need to study in future research as well. Next. Okay, overall, we find that it really matters how energy communities are set up. So we looked at whether it's organized from bottom up to top down, whether it's homogeneous, diverse, what they are interested in, how embedded they are in the local communities. All these slight differences of setup do affect how accepting people are of energy communities and whether they are willing to join. And well, here are a few things summarized, but I think that is the main message. So you need to get people involved, and it matters who you get involved. And the moment that community members are involved, that you make sure that there is a diverse group of people involved, that is probably the way to go to promote not only a sustainable energy transition, but also a transition that is just and inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you, Lise.
I went a bit over time, I think. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Thank you for this introduction and for presenting the results. We will have then the opportunity to explore more in depth with our panelists the situation and barriers for women and for low-income groups or vulnerable households. There are some comments and questions in the chat. So can we have the presentation of the webinar? Yeah, Laura answered. We will upload the recording on the platform. Then Christopher Blomley, I found engaging disaffected communities is easier for members.
If you include them from an early stage, and whether, and that is indeed also what you see in participation sometimes, that if you look at participation projects, that people are involved only at a very late stage and that they can't really have an influence. And if people feel that they are really part of a project and actively shape a project, and that you feel represented by the people setting up this project, that can facilitate both acceptability of such projects as well as willingness to join. We never use the term fuel poverty, greening the local economy where the local community benefits. Yes, so that's nice. So you do immediately feed back to the entire local community. Okay. Then Ali Al-Sayed, I'm surprised by this. I think in England it's the opposite. Women participation seems to be higher. Yeah, and that is something that we are exploring. So we are wondering whether there might be something specific to energy communities, and whether this frames as an energy community rather than a more general environmental initiative. That could be that there are certain stereotypes that we are now examining, which might hamper people, particularly women, from joining. We find it in different countries, but there's in Italy, we also find some counterintuitive findings where women indeed seem a little less likely to join, but particularly when they also see other women involved. And this might have to do that the biggest energy community in Italy is led by a woman. So they might have different stereotypes about what energy communities are and who are involved. And that is something that we are exploring right now. We have observed that in many energy communities that we are supporting are led by men, a crucial aspect to work on in it. Yes, and we indeed find this in Spain as well. Some data on women were published last year through, thank you, very interesting.
Yeah, also if you have any research or any study of any report that you would like to share, you can send it to us, and then we can upload it on other resources on the Community Energy Academy platform, where you can find the self-learning material prepared for the session. We also upload those reports or any finding that you would like to share, anything it's relevant for this session, so that people can have access to it. I would move now to our panel discussion. Thank you, Lise. Thank you a lot, and also for joining us on such short notice. So I would present now our panelists. We'll first hear from, from Johannes Baumann from WECF. I think Laura, you can make him co-host. Johannes will share his slide.
He should have the permission now.
Johannes.
Thank you. So I can share my slides now, right?
Yeah, I will stop sharing.
Yeah, that's good.
And 1 second. So for you to know, Johannes works as a project manager in the energy department at WECF. He implements national and international projects in the field of renewable energy and gender equality. Before that, he spent several years working with environmental and sustainability management system according to the ICLEI and ICLEI ES+. So I would leave now the floor to Johannes.
So I just get into presentation mode.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Just a second. Now it should be full screen, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
thank you.
Yes, so thanks a lot for having me here. And thanks a lot also to Lise for this nice keynote in the beginning. I think we also have a lot of points where we can connect with also some actions and things we tried out to get more women in energy cooperatives. So maybe we can also reflect on that later on, or maybe it's good for the discussion then. So the topic now is the barriers and facilitators for the empowerment of women and vulnerable households in the energy transition. So I have, of course, the focus on women, but there's often an intersection. So because we are also doing research on energy poverty, that's why I also kept here the vulnerable households, but I know there's a presentation coming after my presentation on that. So maybe shortly to WECF. I know it's hard to pronounce. So it stands for Women Engaged for a Common Future. We have a nexus between gender equality and sustainability. We are an NGO and I'm based in Munich, but we have other offices in Utrecht, in Annemasse in France, and in Georgia. And we consider us as a big network working with around 250 partner organizations in 70 different countries. So yes, we're covering a lot of countries and have also different projects in these countries. So maybe we jump into the barriers we have here under this topic. And the first one, of course, is, and I think it's very still very strong, the gender norms and stereotypes. That stereotypes are prevalent, like technical things are only for men, for example. It's a very common one. And I think it's really, really important to be aware of the stereotypes and really to question the stereotypes. This is always what we are telling when we have capacity trainings. The second one would be a lack of decision-making opportunities. So the energy sector is male-dominated, and often the positions are decision-making positions. And so this has really tremendous implications on how the whole infrastructure, for example, is set up. And you know, the infrastructure in energy has a very long lifetime. Think just of transport. So it has a time about several decades before its change when it was a big decision. Then the next one, I think it's also very yeah, it's not a secret, I would say. So limited time and financial resources. So the gender pay gap is prevalent in every country, in every society. And often there's this term of unpaid care work. So women are much more engaged in so-called care work, and this is mostly not reimbursed. Further barriers would be a lack of awareness and knowledge. So I would say this is on different level, on all levels, like on in politics, but also in companies, cooperatives, and also on individual level. For example, with companies, we found out that often there is a pledge, like you find something strategical, a paper, yeah, we stand for gender equality, but if you have then a look in the implementation and the concrete actions, there it get lost on the way. So I think it's always easy to make this pledge, but on the other hand, it has to be yeah, it has to be then done, transferred into action. And what's also often missing is the lack of gender disaggregated data. So this would also be the basis to have better knowledge about impacts, about awareness. And I think that is also something which has to be elaborated very soon to get a better understanding. And yeah, the last point here on the slide, I already talked about it, that the lack of targeted actions to support gender equality. So when we have a look at the facilitators, and we start on the top, then we would say supportive policies are one key element. So we need a strong policy integration and also coherency, that policies affect each other in a positive way, and to strongly include environmental, but not only environmental aspect, but also have a look at the implications to society and include social aspects. And the next point would be the gender monitoring and gender impact analysis. So you have to have a look at the policies, what's happening when they are implemented. How are they impacting each gender? And for that, as I mentioned before, you need this disaggregated data. This is a prerequisite to do this. Then we know money is always good and a good incentive to control things, to get things into reality. And that's why budgeting with an intersectional lens at all levels, European, national, and local level, is really, really important. And what's also important is to really foster to get women more into the STEM professions. And there, I think there are different opportunities starting from kindergarten and school, but also promoting this on a later stage. So here I have two examples from our organization. We did a gender impact assessment and monitoring tool. It's for free. You can find it on our website under publications. And there is written under this tool how you can conduct this gender impact assessment and monitoring. So like a step-to-step guide, I think, which could be helpful. So there are different fields where you can apply it, and you can pick up the fields you want to apply. And on the second publication, which is also on our website, is why the European Green Deal needs ecofeminism. And this is, here we have an, let's put it as an ecological policy. But what I mentioned before, it's very important to also include this social dimension into it. We have more facilitators. So the next one would be advocacy and awareness. So role models are really good to that you have role models and promote role models. Then, of course, gender responsive communication. It's very important how, for example, pictures are made. That I think I have an example on the next slide, that there is not photovoltaic panels and only men working, for example, which would be not helpful. And also like the recruiting for energy organizations, for example, for companies, energy companies targeting especially women. So we also heard a lot, and we're in discussion that it's very important how the description of the job is made. This is crucial to attract women, and to consider this as an example. And this is also for energy cooperatives, to refer to Lise. We find out that this is really important. If you want to attract more women in energy cooperatives, you have to completely change your marketing strategy for new members. The next field would be capacity building and training programs. So this is also one of our core activities. There, gender assessment and gender action plans for organizations in the energy sector are really, really helpful. So with a gender assessment, you get the baseline, the status quo of an organization. You see the different roles, how is power distributed, how is the share of women, and so on. And then you go over in the gender action plan, and for the results from the gender assessment, which you reflect before you implement concrete actions. And this is also what I mentioned before. Often there is a pledge in the strategy of organizations. Yes, we are gender equal, we are very diverse, but when it comes to action, this is a helpful tool, a gender action plan. And of course, we are also doing training for individuals. For example, we also find out, we did some training on balcony modules, and this could be like an easy step, an easy approach to motivate women to be more engaged in the energy transition. So we found this like as an entrance door, let's say. Here's the project I'm currently working on. And here the picture, this would be gender responsive and very good, like to promote it like this. It's called TEAT. It's a project in Ukraine, and it's about training for energy auditors and technical designers. And our role in this project is we make capacity trainings to get more women into this job. And what we are doing here, we train organizations with what I said before to have this gender assessment and have this gender action plans to do so. And this is also something I wanted to show you. I think it's my last slide. I hope I'm talking not too much. It's our WECF energy approach. And what you see here in the middle, you see the actions we are doing when we are having a project. So we start with the analysis, qualification, and so on. And so in the very middle is gender justice. So we try to mainstream this in every stage. And on the fringe, on the outside, you see the impact and outcome dimension, and this is where we orient ourselves very strong, of course, on the SDGs, and yeah, which we like to fulfill, or which we are motivated to strive for. So yes, this was my last slide. So thank you a lot, and I stop now with my sharing, if it's okay.
Thank you a lot, Johannes, and thank you for sharing all those resources. I will link them on the Community Energy Academy platform, so that will be accessible also later on. And thank you for underlining all those aspects that are relevant for tackling gender-related barriers to inclusion. Also in the chat, Christopher, mentioned the relevance of access and knowledge poverty in inclusion, as well as education and skills. And I linked there one other module that we had for the Community Energy Academy that was focused on knowledge, skills, and information-related barriers to energy citizenship. You can find there the recording and the self-learning material that was prepared for the session. I totally agree that energy citizenship and more in general energy transition or barriers to energy transition are multidimensional and need an integrated approach to it, also when tackling barriers for different groups and demographics. If you have any question or comment, you can leave it in the chat, and Johannes can address it now or later when we have reserved time for questions. I will now share my screen here. And leave the floor to Jurijs. Whoops, sorry. So Jurijs is working with us at ICLEI. He's working on the Sample project, as I said, focusing on vulnerable households access to renewable energy generation. Jurijs, I will share your slides now. Yeah, thank you for sharing the website. So Jurijs is a senior expert on sustainable energy system team here at ICLEI. He focuses on topics related to energy poverty and promoting access to renewable energy, climate action planning and monitoring, as well as climate and environmental data management and reporting. Is supporting the implementation of several EU-level initiatives and projects like the European Bauhaus, 100 climate neutral cities, e-planet, and green city action planning. I can't see you, Jurijs, but you can start talking, and I'm sure you will be.
Yes. Thank you, Benedetta. Hello, good morning, everyone. Yes, it's my pleasure to be here today. Yes, Benedetta, thank you so much for inviting me today. And also, yes, it's my great pleasure, yes, to present after Lise and also Johannes has opened already with their presentation today's topic. And yes, also already maybe we've seen their presentation, also we've seen the chat. We already started to talk about these barriers, about, for example, the lack of knowledge, the knowledge powerness, for example. So yes, it's a good time to continue with the presentation on the Sunfall project. So I would like maybe to ask to move to the next slide, please. And yes, within my presentation, I would like, yes, briefly to present what is the Sunfall project about. Of course, who are the testing and who are implementing the Sunfall financial support scheme to the vulnerable households. Of course, what is the focus on the Sunfall project on empowerment and also on engagement. Also, as Benedetta mentioned, basically this is like maybe keywords of the Sunfall project. And of course, I'm glad also to share at the end of my presentation this opportunities how to learn more and how to benefit from the Sunfall project, how could every interested stakeholder could do it. And so let's move to the next slide, please. And let's start, yes, with the first question. What is the Sunfall project about? So yes, Sunfall project, or I would say maybe like the full title of the project is the Euro Solar for All, Energy Communities for a Fair Energy Transition. So this is a European Union funded project, and the main keywords of this project are energy poverty, just energy transition, renewable energy sources, and also financial support scheme. And yes, this project is implemented by the consortium that consists of 11 European organizations. And here we are talking about local municipalities, we are talking about local energy agencies, we are talking about educational, for example, university institutions, non-governmental organization. And I would say like the main aim, the main objective of this project is, yes, to provide an access to renewable energy, specifically with a focus to the vulnerable households. And within this project, we are talking about of financial support scheme that is currently already running for some time, and also with a success in the United States, in the New York State. And so this initiative Solar for All, currently with the help of the Sunfall project, with the help of the Sunfall pilots, are tested, are implemented in the European context in order, yes, to support vulnerable households through engaging and empowering. So I would say maybe like the one of the characteristics is it's not about this, I would say maybe like more classical financial supporting, but it's more about engaging, empowering, and thus also helping people who are currently in vulnerable situation to start learning how to help themselves to come out of this situation. And so if we move to the next slide, please, I would like also maybe just to add, already Lise and also Johannes mentioned in their presentations that yes, maybe this like this key of barriers why many households do not participate in the energy transition, and specifically, yes, if we are talking about vulnerable households, of course, it's necessary to mention the first of all lack of access of information, lack of knowledge, maybe lack of sufficient understanding of these keywords, of these processes, of these opportunities. Of course, we are talking about these difficulties also to access the financial means. for example, to start using the renewable energy. And of course, as one of also maybe of aspect also could be mentioned as different types of house ownership, especially if we are talking about apartment buildings and if, for example, these apartments belong to the different people. So basically, I would like to mention that one of the main goal of the financial support scheme of the Sunfall project and also of the Sunfall project is to engage and to empower vulnerable households by showing them that yes, energy communities can help them benefit yes from the renewable energy. And basically I would like to mention that yes, that the Sunfall project consists of 4 parts or 4 steps. I would like to say that first of all, of course, we are talking about renewable energy, and yes, the solar energy is generated by the local PV installations that are owned by the local municipality and located close to the places where these eligible participants, beneficiaries of this financial support scheme, or of course in our case it's vulnerable households live. So for example, this PV installation could be installed on the roof top of the building where people live, or I don't know, next to this building, or maybe on the rooftop of the public building that belongs to the municipality. So this is like the starting point. The next one I would like to mention that yes, depending on the pilot, and I will present our pilots in a few seconds. Depends on the pilot use case, this renewable solar energy that is produced with the help of this PV installation are provided either for the direct consumption by the Sunfall beneficiaries. It's like one case, and the second case, or this energy is fed into the local power grid. And the next step I would like to mention that yes, that the Sunfall beneficiaries continue to get electricity as usual, so there is no need to install or maybe maintain solar panels, because of course at the beginning it would be maybe too complicated, too difficult for them. And therefore this is like the step number 4. Through this financial support scheme and its redistribution mechanism, Sunfall participants financially benefit from the renewable energy produced and of course from its value. But again, what I would like to mention that the Sunfall project is not only about financial support of the vulnerable households, but definitely it's quite a lot also of providing an advice on efficient energy consumption and also energy management return. Again, working, I would say maybe on this educational empowerment of the vulnerable households. Definitely, it's also about each vulnerable households who are part of the Sunfall project. Yes, they receive invitation to the workshop about the energy rights, about the energy efficiency, and of course they also receive this opportunity to visit and learn about the PV system. What are the system about? How does they look? How does they produce energy, etc. Again and again, we are coming back to the improving the lock of knowledge, improving the level of understanding, of course, educating, and through the educating, also through this educational empowerment, also promoting this just and fair transition. And so if we move to the next slide, please, I would like to mention that yes, Sunfall project is working, and also the work of the project is organized at 3 levels. So yes, the level number 1, and here yes, we are answering the question who are testing and implementing currently. I would like to mention that yes, at the first level we have 4 pilots. We have municipality of Almada in Portugal, municipality of Barcelona in Spain, the region of Côte d'Azur in France, and also municipality of Rome in Italy. And all of them currently, yes, are testing the Sunfall financial support scheme in their local context. Of course, I would like to mention that, yes, on my previous slide, as I presented maybe these 4 steps, it gives, I would say, maybe like the first maybe starting point. The starting point is the same for all of them. But of course, each of them is trying to adapt this financial support scheme specifically to the local context. Specifically, I would say maybe to the local social, economic, geographical, ecological context, etc. For example, in the case of the city of Almada, these PV installations are installed on the rooftop of the buildings of the social housing buildings, and beneficiaries of the Sunfall are people who live in these buildings. For example, in the case of the city of Rome, here we are talking about the installation of PV panel on the public buildings. For example, schools, kindergartens, and again, beneficiaries are people who live next to these buildings. So thus creating this community. In the case, for example, of the Côte d'Azur pilot, here we are talking about focus on the vulnerable households which suffer from the higher energy cost. And again, at the beginning, yes, a municipality, first of all, is focusing on sharing energy, not more, maybe not so much, maybe at the beginning, like on sharing energy, but is more on the redistribution of the benefits of energy that already is selling from the Kodesava existing solar power plants. But of course, the second pilot will focus on this collective self-consumption process and also to plan how to share the energy with the local inhabitants. So I would say that each of the pilots is trying to fit, to adapt maybe this financial support scheme to their local context. If we are moving to the next slide, please, I would like to mention that, yes, this is the second level of the Sunfall project work. And here we are talking about that, yes, of course, Sunfall would like to be replicable, would like to be sustainable project. And therefore, yes, we have created Sunfall Community of Practice Observers Group. And here we are talking about 9 cities from the different European countries who are currently working close to the Sunfall pilots, learning from them how to use this financial support scheme, how to adapt, and of course they are working on the development of the local dialects with the local communities, and of course on development of the local Sunfall sustainable implementation plan. So this is the level 2, and the level 3, yes, Sunfall is offering capacity building and knowledge sharing program for all interested stakeholders. If we move to the next slide, please, of course, I would like to mention, but what is this focus of empowerment? And if we move to the next slide, please, I would like to also maybe to present, yes, with the help of our pilots, yes, I try to summarize what are the key elements of the Sunfall approach to empowerment. And here I would like to say that, of course, there are like 2 main elements. First of all, of course, we are talking about the strategy of engagement of these vulnerable households, how to engage, maybe how to inform. And here, yes, we are talking about this designing this information campaign through the Sunfall program. Of course, maybe as a key learnings and also as a main tools, of course, the use of the different digital communication and media tools, for example, Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, Instagram. Of course, we are talking about this to publish this information in the local newspapers, to develop, for example, a comic book that I will present in a few seconds, to develop a flyer, thus to communicate, thus to engage. Of course, we are talking about the recruitment actions, and here, yes, we are focusing on the organizing the different informative session, on implementation of the door-to-door information campaign with this potential beneficiaries of the Sunfall project, engagement, a person trusted by the beneficiaries. So again, we are talking about these 2 levels. First of all, Sunfall is trying maybe to engage beneficiaries, and then among these beneficiaries to select more enthusiastic, more active person, and again maybe helping them to become mentor for the other vulnerable households, how to engage, how to support. Basically, this is like one part, and in my also in a few seconds in my next slides I will present also some examples. And so the second part, of course, we are talking about the community work plan with a big focus on the communication. And here, of course, I would say like the 3 main components are communication with the beneficiaries, of course, in order to plan and also to implement this direct in-person interaction with them all the time throughout the whole process. Of course, also as our pilot also has indicated, it's important to create and also provide maybe one specific email address, or to have a phone line, or maybe to create a WhatsApp list channel in order again to provide one easily accessible way how to communicate, how to get an information if there is such a need from the side of the vulnerable households. Of course, we have identified that yes, sometimes there is a need to print and hang, for example, on the wall of the buildings, the informative posters about these opportunities. The next one, of course, not only to talk about the beneficiaries, but also to talk about the broader community. And therefore, of course, in a few also seconds, I will present one of the tasks that we did, that each of our pilot did. Of course, we developed a collaboration with other municipal departments, again, through the mapping, who are this department, housing department, social care department, development departments, etc. And of course, to cooperate with all other local associations, school, community centers, yes, who could help to implement these different types of the empowerment: individual, community, educational, social, economic, political, etc. Of course, community strategy activities. As I have mentioned that yes, each of the Sunfall pilots is working on organizing workshops with the beneficiaries and also with other members of the broader community. Of course, also each of the pilot organized visit to the PV installation for the interested residents. Of course, is working on organizing individual energy advice session. And of course, also, as I mentioned, working on developing this mentoring, support mentoring activities. I would like, yes, maybe to move to the next slide, please. And yes, I would like also to share some examples. For example, in case of the information campaigns throughout the program, of course, as it was mentioned that yes, we're talking about engagement and empowering, that it starts from the understanding, from the educational empowerment, maybe from the receiving maybe additional information. And here, yes, I would like to mention maybe some example as Sunfall project flyer, where yes, we are trying to present maybe these key elements, key ideas about this project. One more example, one of our pilots from Rome, they have created knowledge cards. What do I use best? Where do I save? How do I save? The more you know, the more you save. So basically, I would say it's a knowledge cards for the vulnerable households, where with the help of this simple, understandable language, provided information in order to start to understand how to correctly understand the energy bills, how to read energy bills, how is it possible, again, with this day-to-day habits, how do we use different energy equipment at home, how to use it more efficiently, how maybe with these small steps, but to make maybe some improvements, how to reduce cost, how to reduce bills, for example. And I would like maybe also to mention that we have produced also a glossary, a vocabulary in a simple language to talk about maybe this more complex topic. Also, we have created several videos, and in this video, yes, not only representative of pilots, but also beneficiaries are trying to share their feedback, their ideas. And maybe as an example, maybe such an inspirational example, I would like to mention a quote mentioned by one of the beneficiaries, and this lady is saying that sometimes the little things make the big things. Again, so if we just start with something small, step by step, we could achieve quite a big results. One of example also, our pilot in the Côte de Savoie has created a comic book, the Sunfall comic book. And again, this is a story about one girl, and this is a story about looking into the future, into the 2065. Again, understanding and seeing the world that basically has succeeded in adapting and acting to the challenges of the climate change. And again, this was like an example how to reach not only maybe adults but also children, and how to talk about complex topic in a more simple way. If we move to the next slide, please. Yes, here I would like to also, as I mentioned, yes, it's important, of course, also this impersonal empowerment, impersonal maybe communication. And yes, here there are also some examples. For example, Sunfall information session and recruitment of beneficiaries in the Sunfall pilot in Almada, meeting with the residents, also meeting in Barcelona, where this main idea I explained, where for example, the keywords are discussed, and also how to engage, how to support. There are also some examples, for example, invitations sent to the, for example, by post, or invitation made by phone. Example also, for example, of some symbolic, again, informative, communicative gift for the vulnerable households to start thinking, to start to participate. Slide, please. Also, also, as I mentioned before, and also what we have learned, in order to understand, yes, maybe how to implement this more effective and more efficient communication, and how to understand who are the key stakeholders in your local context. Of course, each of our pilot has done this communication context analysis, and has done this the mapping of key actors, important actors in the field of the energy poverty, and after that understanding how to engage them, how with the help of these different key actors to communicate, to engage, and of course to empower also vulnerable households. One more example on the right side here, also we have experienced that of course it's important, yes, to provide an information about the specific project, about maybe the specific case on the municipality website. And also, yes, if we move to the next slide, I have also summarized maybe these key tips, maybe this good practice from each of the pilot. For example, in case of the municipality of Barcelona, as a good practice, it was mentioned that of course it's important to build this trustful relationship with that has been basically with these users again throughout this process. Of course, it's important, yes, to provide maybe the small incentive like the energy kit flyers with this energy efficiency tips to start something maybe with some small tips. Of course, it's important during the workshop to provide these relaxed spaces. I would say maybe with some water, with coffee, with snacks, where neighbors can talk with each other, and again where maybe these people could start talking also about such topics as an energy consumption, how to reduce bill, how to create energy communities, etc. So if we move to the next slide, please. There are some examples from the region of Côte d'Ivoire. Again, also as a good practice is development of the communication for the beneficiaries recruitment. Again, understanding who are these beneficiaries, how more efficiently to contact them, how to communicate with them, either through this door-to-door session, either, for example, the creation of the comic book, or either, I don't know, be some digital tools. Definitely to develop exchange with a local social worker who again has like a stronger connection with the vulnerable households, for example. If we move to the next slide, please, I would like also to share some examples of good practice from the municipality of Almada. And here we are talking about that, yes, maybe sometimes these small gifts, rewards in general are very well accepted by the community and also enhance participation rates. Again, these gifts, rewards could be, for example, about education, about informing about on this topic. Of course, workshop session, for example, mentoring tasks, preparing beneficiaries for the next steps as well. So I would say maybe this is like continuing process how to work with them. And if we move to the next slide, please. Here also we have some also good practical example from the municipality of Rome. Basically, yes, this domestic energy efficiency aims to optimize the use of the individual appliances, how to make it more efficient. Of course, through the improving of the behavior, basically, yes, it's a good to build this, I would say, like a line, change in behavior, actions, and tips for decarbonization. Of course, tips maybe for reducing the bills, tips for improving the use of the energy efficiency. Of course, maybe one more, participation in the workshops can be open to more than just energy vulnerable or energy poor beneficiaries. That's why it's important to engage all broader communities. And maybe one more also good practice that, yes, maybe this to use this more appropriate communication strategies for the different vulnerable population segment. And of course, it's important, yes, to implement a targeted assessment of the type of the users. Therefore, this maybe mapping, stakeholder mapping, actor mapping is important in order, yes, to understand how to communicate, how to avoid these communication barriers. And again, maybe one of also, in my opinion, important also this learning lessons learned is please try to avoid a paternalistic approach. When you, for example, define, when you manage, when you coordinate, of course, it's important to give the flow and to engage and to motivate, to be active, to be enthusiastic, of course, vulnerable households themselves. So yes, and if we move, yes, to the next slide, just a last slide from myself. If you would like to learn more about the Sunfold project, if you would like, of course, maybe to look maybe in a more detail the project deliverables, of course, I would like warmly welcome you to visit the Sunfold project website, of course, to follow the Sunfold project on LinkedIn and Twitter account, of course, to watch the Sunfold inspirational project video on the YouTube channel, and of course, if you would like to become a Sunfold replicator, you're welcome to leave your contact, and we would be happy to have you on board as a Sunfold project replicator.
Thank you a lot, Jurijs.
Yes, thank you so much, Benedetta.
Thank you. And for everyone, you can find then the recording on the platform. We have some questions on the chat from Carmen Castells Ramon. Are the beneficiaries of the PV installation paying something, or is it free for them, Jurijs?
Yes, thank you for your question, Carmen. So basically, yes, the idea is that this is free for them. Yes, first of all, as I have mentioned, that yes, that each of the pilots started to work in order to understand what is the selection criteria, what could be this eligibility criteria, how municipality could help this vulnerable households, but in a more, I would say, more proactive way. And that's why, yes, this was like the selection of these beneficiaries, and now municipality is working with these beneficiaries. And yes, as I have mentioned, basically the energy produced thanks to this PV installation also is this, I would say, as a resource how to support vulnerable households from the side of the municipality, and from the other side, of course, as a source for the financial resources. Yes, maybe how to help to pay these bills, how to help, yes, maybe to improve the situation.
Thank you, Jurijs. And another one from Carmen also is, how do you select or conduct the beneficiaries? So through social service from the municipalities or social association? Or Carmen, if you want to add something or ask something else, feel free.
Yes, thank you for your question, Carmen. And yes, I would like to mention that this was, I would say, maybe like one of the starting points of the Sunfall project. And again, yes, we learned, for example, how, for example, this beneficiary selection was done in this already running, already running this approach in the United States. Of course, we were talking in each of the pilot how to do it. And basically, yes, what we did, yes, each of the pilot, of course, first of all, yes, identified these key actors. And of course, one of the key actors, of course, was this social services, municipal social services, is a social care department, or is, for example, social service agencies. Of course, it was also, for example, housing departments, all other, for example, topical related departments. And of course, like each of the pilots also developed this eligibility criteria and evaluation criteria. And of course, also here, I would like maybe to suggest definitely to visit the Sunfall website, as specifically the section on the resources. And yes, one of the deliverable is specifically focused on the evaluation and selection criteria, defining, and again, what criteria are these? For example, level of income, for example, age, for example, the size of the family, for example, some specific neighborhood, for example, I don't know, like the size of the households, etc., etc. But maybe I definitely recommend you, yes, to visit and maybe to learn more. But again, maybe like one of the lessons learned was definitely to maybe to split eligibility criteria and evaluation criteria in order, again, maybe to try to cover as more appropriately, as more correctly, these potential beneficiaries, and again, maybe giving like a different groups of the vulnerable households also opportunity to benefit from this program.
Thank you. If you have any other question, you can drop them in the chat. I thank Johannes and Lise and Jurijs for their contribution. Thank you a lot. It was really interesting, and also we are learning a lot by doing.